Indiana Jones, It's a podcast about Indiana Jones. Every movie, 1 minute at a time. The Indiana Jones Minute.
Welcome back to the Indiana Jones Minute. This is the podcast where we discuss Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, one bedtime story at a time. I'm Pete Mummert.
I'm Joseph of Arimathea.
I'm Jerry the disciple, whom Jesus loved.
And today we're joined once more by Alex the Blessed from the Godfather Minute. Welcome back, Alex Robinson.
Hello, everyone. May God bless you.
The venerable.
Yeah, Alexandros. And today we're here to talk about Minute 20. And Minute 20 begins with Donovan explaining just exactly what the Holy Grail is. And it ends with Indy complaining that Donovan's great discovery seems pretty vague.
Okay, so I always knew that the Holy Grail was a chalice Jesus used during the Last Supper. But I never knew this part about Joseph of Arimathea using it to catch Jesus' blood under the cross.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. No, okay, Jerry, you and I, it's not like shameful to say we're both basically lapsed Catholics. We were raised Catholics as kids, but you at least went all the way through Catholic high school and everything. So I was expecting you to run circles around me on this stuff. But yeah, I'm exactly like him. Like, wait, really? Was the cup? Who would bring the cup from dinner to like the crucifixion?
Well, I was thinking right here, like Joseph of Arimathea, that's some super fanboy stuff right there. You know, he's like, Jesus is being crucified. He's like, up, under the cross, trying to catch the blood. I mean, that's just macabre.
That's like the same thing as like, not taking it out of its package back then. Like just up the price by catching the blood in it.
It's disgusting.
What did he do with it after he caught it? Did he drink
You don't want to know.
I guess that's what Jesus wanted everyone to do.
That's
Exactly.
yeah.
You told me to.
And then imagine, I mean, you're Jesus, and you're like, they lance him, and you're like, really, Joe, really
It's not helping Joe.
Yeah, exactly. That's a horrible story. And you wonder, like, so afterwards, it's like, so Joseph of Arimathea goes and he swipes the dirty dishes from the Last Supper, and then he's like, he's like, hey, if this guy, is who he says he is, this thing's really going to be worth something.
I got the butter knife of Christ.
Certificate of authenticity. So do you think was he putting like a cup under a faucet, or was it like gushing out, or what, like how long did it take to fill the cup?
Well, we're going to see in a couple of minutes, there's a painting in Indy's dad's house of a guy holding a golden chalice, and there's blood just pouring out of Christ.
It's a spout. Yeah.
It's like you turn a faucet.
It's hot and cold running blood from the side of Jesus.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the painter was there painting it from life while
he obviously wasn't, because it's a gold chalice in that scene. So
Oh yeah. I think all signs point to Joseph of Arimathea being just a huge weirdo. Like that he would do that.
Super Christ fanboy.
Yeah.
Although, admittedly, he went around doing that to everyone who was being crucified. So it's not
That's true.
rare.
He may have been like, this is going to go in my Holy Grail blood collection.
Here's Barabbas
And Eric Idle. And
Also, he was a vampire, too. Do they mention that in the movie?
they never talk about that part.
There's that whole, like, that Spartacus, like, where they crucify 6,000 people in the Appian Way. Like, oh, my God.
Yes, you are Spartacus, too. Yes, you're also Spartacus. I get it.
That was something I never knew. But you know what? Leave it to the Middle Ages to create some morbid
Well, that's the thing. There's nothing at all in the Bible about any of this. There's nothing about the Holy Grail. There's nothing about... Joseph of Arimathea shows up in the Gospels, but he only shows up because he asked for permission to take Christ's body and to bury it in a tomb that he bought. And so
I kind of remember that.
Yeah, it's like he owns the grave, and he sort of lets Jesus be buried in the grave, like so he can have a proper burial.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until the Middle Ages that people started talking about the Holy Grail. And when they first did, it wasn't even about the cup that Christ drank out of. Like the first mention we get of it is kind of early in the 12th century, and it's Chrétien de Troyes who's writing about Percival, and he's wandering kind of through the forest, and he comes across the Fisher King's castle. And the Fisher King is this guy that's got this crazy wound, and while he goes to visit him, some these people walk through the hall where he's eating in this procession, and one guy's got a bleeding lance, and one guy's got a candelabra, and like these ladies walk through, and finally someone walks through with a grail. And it's not the grail, it's just a grail. And all we know is that it's some kind of magical basin or like something you'd put food in that could heal somebody.
Huh.
Yeah, if my understanding is when you start looking at this Holy Grail stuff, like it goes way back into pagan rituals and pagan lore, where it's like the Grail was actually sort of like a horn of plenty or a cauldron of there'd be everlasting food and abundance and everlasting life.
And in one of the early legends, like it eventually kind of moved on to the Arthurian stuff, and in one of them they were trying to find the Grail because it would constantly be refilled with meat and drink.
Right.
So it is kind of like a hoard of plenty. And it like in some instances, early instances, it was a cup, and some it was a stone, and some it was kind of a chalice, and some it was a plate you would put food on.
Yeah,
and so
like a cauldron, something like a big cornucopia thing.
And it wasn't until later in the late 12th century that Joseph of Arimathea starts getting mentioned, and he like has this vision, and Christ shows up to him, and he gives him the Grail, and then he sends it to England off with for Arthur to get, and all that. We sort of end up with the story we get now, but that's a lot later, and there's certainly nothing biblical about it.
So you say there's nothing in the Bible about him catching the blood in the cup, but that does come from other stories? Or was that made up in Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade?
No, that comes from other stories in the Middle Ages.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's a question. Do all the movies about the Holy Grail, are they in the same universe?
Oh my God, they better be.
Excalibur and Monty Python and Fisher King and all
man. Because that's all I was thinking about while you were talking about that, Pete. About picturing a giant neon grail on top of a nunnery. And
It gets a little blurry from, it seems like there's about 8 or 9 churches in Europe, and they're all like, "Yep, we had the Grail." There's one in Valencia, Spain, and there's another one in Spain, and then there's one in England.
It's like Famous Ray's Pizza in New York.
Yeah,
Famous Ray. Exactly.
Well, my favorite, there's one in Italy, in Genoa, and they got it from the First Crusade. Like they came back with it, and they thought it was emerald, and it was this green kind of bowl. And they said that was the Holy Grail. And then Napoleon stole it in the early 1800s. And after that, it stopped working. Like, it stopped working miracles. Like, he broke it. Napoleon took it.
Good one,
broke,
Napoleon.
And then when they got it back, it was broken. And then it's like,
Well, what do you mean? How do you break the Holy Grail?
I don't know.
Like, you're like, come on. I thought there's more fish and meat coming out of that thing. Yeah. It's like, well, it's not showing up.
But that's when they found out it wasn't emerald. It was actually glass.
So do you think if you really dropped the real Grail, like a gushing of fish and meat would come pouring, like a bottomless well of...
Or would you just keep getting younger and younger?
Oh, man.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, like when they say, like, eternal, like at what... Like, if you drink from the Holy Grail and you're like 22, do you stay 22? But what happens if you drink and you're like 65?
That's how, like, the vampire thing works, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you get bitten when you're a kid, you stay a kid. And if you get bitten when you're an old man, you stay an old man.
If you watch the rest of this movie, Jerry, I think you'll eventually find out that, I don't think you become younger.
Well, I think Donovan says, like, eternal youth. And you're like, well, it might be a little late for you, guy.
Yeah.
Donovan also says that that's a bedtime story he'd like to wake up to, and that's not how bedtime stories work. So he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Can I just say that sentence there, I had to think about and say over and over and over again, because I'm like, that's a bedtime story I'd like to wake up to. That's a bedtime story I'd like to wake up to.
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm going to go back to sleep. It's like, I can't get out.
Like, Mom, what? The end, what?
I can't get out of this cycle. That's like its own eternal youth damnation. Like, you just keep waking up and going back to sleep and waking up and going back to sleep.
Yeah. He had a very weird childhood, and that's why he's a Nazi sympathizer.
But then Indy insults him immediately. Like, an old man's dream. Mm-hmm. Why is he so insulting here?
Well, he's he's all over the map because he we were talking yesterday about his kind of Tanis moment, like with the bells chiming and his look of awe about the cup of Christ and everything. And I was like, yeah, stupid bedtime stories.
Yeah,
based on also connected with the head shrinker stuff we were talking about. I think as soon as the subject of the Grail came up, I think Indy was immediately like, oh, this is about, like, he immediately thinks of his father, which is why suddenly he's all like, whatever, Dad.
Oh, that's a
some
great
dumb
point.
old man. You get a Grail.
It's like a slowly I turn thing. It's like, did you say Grail?
Well, what's interesting is that, in Raiders, during the whole Porkins exposition part of the Lost Ark, that scene, where they explain the Staff of Ra and Tanis and all that, like Indy's appetite is whetted. He's excited. He's like, yeah, and he starts looking back at the chalkboard, and then the music comes in, and he's way into it. But here, he's like, meh, it's an old man's dream. It's all codswallop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when he says, I've heard this bedtime story before, maybe that really was the bedtime story he always heard.
Oh, it probably was.
And maybe that's why he can sleep so well. Like, maybe that's why he can sleep anywhere. He just immediately starts thinking about the Grail stories. He's like he's out.
And Joseph of Arimathea, catching the blood. It is weird, too, because like later on, he's when Donovan finally actually just mentions his dad, like, if you didn't know that Sean Connery was playing his dad and that he's going to be a character in this movie, and all you saw was him, like, you see his hand, basically, and you see him, like, ignoring River Phoenix and being a cold jerk to him and stuff, you're like, oh, so, like Indy sort of pauses when he hears his dad's name. So that almost reads as, like, don't mention my dad. He's very cold. He was a jerk. Like, his actual response is, like, oh, yeah, my dad was a, serious Grail enthusiast, hobbyist, whatever. But it could almost read as like, my dad, just leave it.
Well, he does immediately insult his dad too. Like he says he's a teacher of medieval literature, the one students hope they don't get.
Right. Yeah.
But what's interesting about that, so Indy's dad isn't even an archaeologist.
No, that's funny. Yeah.
Like, it's not even close.
Yeah.
A teacher of medieval literature, like that's I don't know. That kind of threw me a little bit.
I guess it works, though. I mean, he doesn't have to be an archaeologist to be a, historian and track this stuff down and study it and,
Well, it'd actually make more sense that he would follow after some goofball thing that's not true, that's made up. Like, he's not an archaeologist. Like
that's a good point, because it's medieval literature, which is, I mean, we talk about all the Grail and the lore. I mean, there would be a lot of literature on that, I guess.
Yeah.
Like the Arthur legend and all that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Arthur 2 on the rocks. I wanted to talk about Indiana Jones's bow tie for a second.
Yeah.
Please do, because I like it.
Does he wear a bow tie I mean, obviously he wears a bow tie with the white tuxedo, as we established. Does he wear a bow tie in Raiders? Like bureaucratic fools? Is he wearing a bow tie during that scene?
No, he wears a couple of neckties. Like, he wears a necktie in that
when
scene.
He's teaching.
And when he's teaching, I think he just wears a necktie, doesn't he?
You know what? I have a picture of it on my refrigerator. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to go look right now.
Could you also give me a Gatorade, Jer? Damn it. Oh well. But yeah, I don't. I like the bow tie, and I think it's a good look on him. And Jerry's wrong for not liking bow ties.
So where do you think it ranks? Because I don't think of him as
No,
obviously.
you know what? It's a necktie. You're right. It's
I wonder
not.
why he switched to bow ties.
Yeah.
So this might be only the second bow tie we see him in. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say I'm surprised because it seems like I guess now bow ties are such a nerdy thing to wear. But I guess in some ways Indiana Jones is a nerd. But I was wondering where it ranked in other bow tie wearer.
Oh.
Like, who would you say is the most famous bow tie entertainer these days?
Wow.
I'd say like Howdy Doody.
Howdy Doody doesn't even wear a bow tie.
Does he wear a bow tie? Might
I don't
have
know,
like a
isn't
bolo
it?
tie or something.
Yeah, bolo tie. He's a
Oh, is
cowboy.
that what he is? All right.
No, James
Yeah.
Bond has got to be the most famous.
That's a good
Yeah.
one.
Oh, okay. Does a bow tie with a tuxedo count in the same way as not with a
It's
tuxedo?
just a bow tie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like this
let's
kind of bow tie.
put tuxedos out of it, because then you got Vito Corleone, you got a whole
Right.
plug.
For some reason, the first person I thought of was like young Frank Sinatra. Like, he had a very floppy bow tie as like a bobby socks are kind of
the untied, like loungy kind of bow tie.
Well, that's the older one then. Although that's sort of a tuxedo one, isn't it too?
And I just think of like Humphrey Bogart or Dan Duryea, like those guys from the 40s that wear bow ties.
Yeah,
it's hard to think of a modern.
I had three. Bill Nye, the science guy.
Oh,
sure.
That's a good
yeah.
one. Yeah.
Pee Wee, Paul Rubens.
That's it right there.
Yeah.
Stop. That's it. But keep going.
And I know you don't want to talk about politics, but Mark Russell too is famous.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you guys know who Mark Russell is? But of course you do.
We all have PBS, and we all did when we were kids.
Yeah.
And our parents were watching PBS.
So there you go. Have you guys ever worn a bow tie in a non-tuxedo situation?
How dare you? I wore a bow tie to Movies by Minutes Chicago.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It was all a blur.
You wore a bow tie with shorts.
Yeah.
Did you hear what he said though? All we needed to know. I don't remember.
It's not a statement. It's not a ostentatious thing. It's just a cool thing.
It doesn't stick out.
It's fine. It's just a thing. It's just, if you notice it, then you realize that I'm awesome. And if you don't notice it, then it's just just a piece of the atmosphere.
We didn't notice it.
It's fine. It's fine.
That weekend was a magical whirlwind. I don't remember what anyone was wearing.
He got married twice. He doesn't even remember that.
I remembered what you were wearing, Alex. You had that great cardigan.
Oh yes, totally. I'm retired. I've since retired that cardigan. I've gotten a new cardigan for my public appearances. So, stay tuned, everybody.
Alex just dropped something here, and I'd like to revisit.
Arthur 2 on the rocks.
Yes, there was that.
Whoever's doing Arthur Minute has to do Arthur 2.
George Burns. George Burns was a bow tie guy, right?
Oh yeah, probably. Wait, how about George Bailey, young George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life?
I just saw that movie for the first time ever this Christmas.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I adore that movie. That's a Star Wars movie. That's like Star Wars Godfather level right there. For me, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, do you think
yes.
Indiana Jones is a nerd?
Well, in the sense that he seems to value education, and he's anyone who yells about something belonging in a museum is by definition a nerd. So
that's pretty fair.
Yeah, that's
fair. He reads Latin, so he's a cool nerd. He can swing a whip and stuff, but I would call him that.
Yeah,
he may have been a huger actual nerd, like as a kid, like a younger guy.
Well,
now he's.
I mean, we've seen him as a kid.
That's true.
Yeah, but only like as a boy, like literally as a Boy Scout. So like we didn't get like the full
Boy Scout nerd.
See,
he had long hair though.
Just like a nerd.
Yeah.
Well, in the 20. Well, what year would that have been? Would that have been like
1912?
1912.
Yeah.
That's when all the nerds had long hair back then.
Right. But like now he's kissed a couple of girls, so he's got some he's a little bit smooth, but he's still got all the nerd, elements.
Yeah.
You can take the boy out of the library. You can't take the library out of the boy. I liked the little detail of him wiping the stone with the champagne that he just got.
So
I was going to say, what a slob! What an absolute archaeological slob!
See, to me, that illustrates his his passion, and B, his nerdery, that he's not even going to drink the alcohol. He's just going to use it to clean an early Latin stone.
See, I had the opposite impression. That just bothered me like crazy. Like I was like, he's got to be damaging the sandstone.
Hey, you think Donovan would be like, could you please? I give it to you to drink.
And Donovan doesn't care. But I wanted to get to the bottom of this because it just bothered me. Like it seemed like if you put alcohol on sandstone, it's going to just melt away the stone. So I checked in with our buddy Jamie, the archaeologist, and Jamie actually has a good friend, Lisa, who did her PhD on sandstone weathering in archaeology, I think.
Oh, me too.
She wrote her PhD on sandstone?
Yes, on sandstone weathering.
Oh, she didn't. It wasn't written on sandstone.
Well, maybe she did.
Maybe it's taking forever.
Let me prove it to you.
But I'm just going to read what she said, partly because I don't understand all of it. But she said the acidity of champagne would be a bad thing all around, reducing the mineral matrix that holds the quartz grains together and speeding up weathering in particular around the etching where the edges are most vulnerable.
Thank you, Jordy.
Yep, thank you. And but she goes on to say, if there are silicates in the matrix, then these could swell up substantially, as they have presumably not recently been exposed to water and are likely dehydrated. Add that to Indy's finger rubbing, and you actually have quite a damaging procedure. Indy should know better, and that tablet belongs in a museum.
Indy should know better.
Well, that's classic, though. He's consistent about that.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing surprising about him just rubbing champagne all over something.
Right.
I'm so lost just with the image of somebody going to the store to buy a printer cartridge in the Flintstones, and it's a giant sandstone slab, and like they're writing their paper on sandstone.
Well, wait, that wouldn't be the printer cartridge. That would be the bird would be the printer cartridge.
Oh, yeah.
The bird would be the. I guess you're right. I'm talking about like the ream of paper is just a giant slab of sandstone.
Wait, Tommy, do your bird. Do it.
It's a living. She'll get an A.
I was just going to ask you.
Oh, my ache and beak.
If the animals ever say anything besides "it's a living." Clearly, you've memorized
I have a couple.
them all.
Yeah. There was like one was like a. I don't know. She was washing dishes with a penguin or something. I forget what it was. And, my hands are killing me. It's like, her hands are killing her.
Oh, okay.
I love that at the very end of like they roll the credits and like Fred puts the cat out and it's like a saber-toothed tiger and the cat goes back in and it dumps Fred out. It's like my favorite part of the whole Flintstones.
You never see that cat on the show, do you?
No, you never see that
Saber-toothed
cat on
tiger.
It's like a saber-toothed tiger. Yeah.
They euthanized it after they threw Fred out of the house.
A very special episode.
It's one of the only things that you're like, oh, that actually could be possible. Because the saber-toothed tiger was what, like 15,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago? You're like, it wasn't like, quote, a dinosaur.
Right,
Yeah, it's not 60 million years ago.
Yeah.
It is the most realistic part of the Flintstones.
Yeah. That's the one that Neil deGrasse Tyson watches over and over and over again.
Wait.
We skipped over Mrs. Donovan coming in the room. And as we mentioned before, she is the actress who plays Mrs. Donovan is actually Julian Glover's real life wife.
What does John Glover have to say about that?
John Glover's furious about this.
He's getting too old for this.
But if you listen carefully when the door opens, at this point you can very clearly hear that they're playing the Imperial March on a piano.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I went back and listened.
Really funny.
That's incredible.
So is Mrs. Glover like an actress who's been in other things, or is this just kind of like I just want a little bit extra money to throw my wife some work?
Yeah, I think they actually just, I think the producer said, hey, Julian, how about your wife want to be in this? And he's like, yeah.
She doesn't play General Veers' wife in Empire?
It was a big deleted scene.
Yeah.
Deleted, yeah. She is wearing the necklace of Coronado. I mean, that thing is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be.
Pretty substantial.
He's got a red carnation. Maybe he bought it from his buddy with a Panama hat.
Well, what do we think they're doing here? Like, what kind of gala event is this at whatever time you guys think it is? 3:30 in the afternoon or 6 o'clock, whatever it is.
It's a Nazi fundraiser.
Well, yeah. What kind of gala do you play in Imperial March?
I bet it's the other precious metal barons. You know, the gold king. And
You know what's interesting? It sounds like she said you're ignoring your guest.
You're neglecting our guests.
Does she say our guests? To me, when I heard it, it sounded like I couldn't hear an S.
Oh, okay.
I was like, maybe there's just one dude.
I do get the strong feeling that, like, you see about 3 or 4 people through the door, and there's probably 3 or 4 people there, like, behind the door. That's like it.
Yeah.
But it suggests, like, a much bigger group.
why did he have the goons pick up Indiana Jones during a party? Why didn't he have it do it in the morning?
He probably had it all figured out and like, okay, get the goon, get Indiana Jones here on Thursday afternoon, and then like the wife's like, oh, but the Rogers are coming over, and the
Totally double booked.
Zinc Baron and the Diamond Baron.
Well, see, I thought it might be safer if he knows Indy's not going to try to kill him or like beat him up if he's got guests in the other room.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
And it'll give him an excuse to wear a tuxedo and look sharp and be a host and seem friendly.
Yeah.
I would have assumed he would he would want Indiana Jones to show up with his tux. You know what I mean? Like say, please, Mr. Jones, Dr. Jones, bring formal wear. And,
Well,
he doesn't really ever explain why he hasn't picked up that way, does he?
No.
Yeah,
Like he says, I hope my men didn't alarm you, but it's never like, why didn't you just tell me you needed to talk to me about something cool in some form of Latin?
Well, that's what we said. We assume that he called Dr. Jones' office probably 8, 9, 10 times.
Oh, right.
And he
yeah.
didn't get it. He called back. And he's like, you know what? Look.
But Barnett, I thought it was Marshall College, boss.
You gonna drive all the way to California?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of weird. And I want you to bring him directly here. It's just a weird setup.
Don't tell them I'm a Nazi.
It is one of those things that reminds me of watching stuff that was filmed in the 70s and 80s, or like kind of Fantasy Island. Because when you look in the other room of the other guests, they look like people from the 80s wearing 1930s clothes.
They really do,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. They're all on Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah.
Along with Fedora.
It always bugged me on Fantasy Island that everyone's fantasy, where my memory of the show is that everyone's fantasy like turns out to be terrible. Like, I wish I was the richest man in the world, and then he's like, being besieged by relatives, or anything positive you wish for. Mr. Rourke shows you that it's terrible. Also.
And you got the impression that it's extremely expensive to go to Fantasy Island.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that it's like a very special that not everyone gets to do it. And so you could have just told me that my thing would have turned out bad. Can I get a do-over? And
what kind of word of mouth is getting around that people are still coming to Fantasy Island? It sounds cool.
Yeah.
Which, it should be billed as Irony Island.
right.
Twilight Zone
Twilight Zone Island.
Because that's what, it's like, we already have one of those. It's King Midas. Everything he touches turns to gold, and then he ruins everything.
Yeah.
Okay, can I have a harem? All right, but you'll get a venereal disease. Can I don't know, anything.
It's like Homer Simpson. You have to be very specific and say, don't have me turn into a giant beer, or don't have me, the rules that, yeah.
Well, now that we've delved into the glories of Fantasy Island, anybody have anything else about minute 20?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, hey, there is something left.
Hey.
Something's coming through the wire.
I like that 1930s like East Coast patrician coming over the wire that you just did.
Say, something's percolating.
Hot crackers.
This just in from Professor Christy Porter. I've been from one side of this galaxy to the other, and I've never seen anything that made me believe. Oh, come on, we got Alex on. I think she's talking about, Indiana Jones. He just that's his reaction to this whole Holy Grail. God, do you even pay attention, Tommy?
I'm paying attention. I understand I don't know.
Yeah, no. Indy's whole reaction to this thing is like, he doesn't believe this bedtime story, Arthur legend, balderdash.
You don't believe in the cup of Christ, do you?
Well, Christy obviously wasn't listening yesterday or 2 days ago when Tom talked about the reset.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Totally.
Yeah.
Christy Porter, professor.
She's sneaking out of her office hours right now.
Yeah. Putting on her bow tie.
Yeah, the three of us are going to be sitting there in the car waiting to ambush her. Well, Alex, you've got lots of other cool stuff to say, and Tom and I have both been talking. We've both really been enjoying the Godfather Minute.
Thank you.
And we recommend people check that out.
I'm going to make everyone an offer they can't refuse. Come listen to the Godfather Minute. Listen to one episode, and if you're not hooked, then you get your money back.
Hey.
Wow.
Go to godfatherminute.com or wherever fine podcasts are sold.
Nice.
It's free, but you know what I mean.
Awesome.
Offer not actually valid. Definitely check that out. We're big fans of it. And you can check us out here. Please, if you feel like, leave us a nice review on iTunes. That would help us out a lot. Leave the Godfather Minute a review on iTunes. And then join us back here on Monday for minute 21 of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade here on the Indiana Jones Minute.
One of those castles with the Holy Grail was actually the Cadbury Castle.
Is that true?
Yeah, I couldn't take it seriously. I was like, awesome. Your grail's full of chocolate eggs.
We know what happened to that one. Beautiful.
Rabbit can't hear you. He doesn't have an ear anymore.